Open my eyes to the world that shines in you. Open my eyes to the world that shines in you. Let me see you brightening the air. Let me see you playing everywhere. For your light that's shining free, I give all I am to thee. Open my eyes to the world. Open my eyes to the world. Open my heart to the world that beats in you. Open my heart to the world that beats in you. Let me feel you in everyone I meet. Let me feel you playing in the trees. Oh, take me to your heart. Let me feel you in every part. Open my heart to the world. Open my heart to
That was William Vitalis with Open My Heart to the World. Welcome to Let's Find Out. The focus of this program is to have our hearts open to the universal, united, kind, loving, and forgiving planet. We have entered into a new decade and new energy form, the transformational 20s. Let's all begin to strengthen the new energies on the planet, strengthen your intuition, and strive to live a peaceful existence free from fear. What strategies, prayers, meditations, and exercises can one use to tap into the higher realms and receive messages from our departed loved ones, creating a higher vibration of living? When we're upset and confused, where can we find the answers? How can we know which path to take? The answers are here on Let's Find Out with our spiritually focused format and guests. And now it's time for tonight's program, Let's Find Out with Elizabeth Joyce.
Good evening, this is Elizabeth Joyce, and I have a very special guest on for tonight, and everybody is going to know this voice. He's been a friend of mine for years, I think back to 1981. His name is Dick Summer, and he's well known through all of the commercials and messages that we hear over television and radio. Hi, Dick, how are you?
I am magnificent, and I hope you are too.
Working on it. Let's talk about how we met way back when, and I wanted to bring people up to what we're doing now. We're both doing similar things in a different way.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Well, I'm sure you remember you came in and you were on my show on NBC Radio, and people said, what is clairvoyance? And you explained it pretty well.
Things you can't see, touch, and feel.
Can you do maybe like 15 seconds and explain exactly what clairvoyance is?
Clairvoyance is the ability to see beyond what you can see, touch, and feel. There's 3 different types. There's clairsentience, clairaudience, and clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is where you see something in front of you, or even when you have a dream. You know, we've all had those realistic dreams. And clairsentience is when you feel it when your hair stands on end and you know something's going on. And then that's clairsentience. And clairaudience is when you hear something in your ear, like a voice or a message. It's really funny how it works. I think that our whole body is a huge computer system that we're not aware of, and that we get all kinds of messages in all kinds of ways. And one thing, we're going to talk about love today and the law of love in many different ways. We're presenting love between parent and child. We're presenting love between a man and a woman. And we're presenting love between the love of your soul and the love of the divine. And that's what today is about. So we have something that Dick created. I don't know when you created it, but when we finish listening to it, we'll talk about it. It's called Mothers and Daughters. It's very, very interesting. So let's give a listen to this.
Mothers and daughters have always had secrets. You think about one that your mother told you every time you make a meatloaf the way she used to do it, with carrots and extra onions. You started helping her make meals when you were 10, and she started trusting you with the sharp knife to cut up those onions. She began telling you about woman things, how to deal with your monthly cycle, the kind of things that you could expect from boys, and what it was like to hold a child in your arms and show it to its father for the first time. It was during one of those talks that she told you about vows and obligations and how important they were, no matter what. Times were terribly hard for her all those years ago. Your father was out of work a lot. For a while, he simply disappeared. Your mother worked in a restaurant and did the best she could for your 3 brothers. There was no money to spare. The man who owned the restaurant was very kind. He let her take food home at the end of the day. You knew about that. But what you didn't know, the secret, was that he and your mother were lovers. He was short, overweight, and scarred from a bar fight when he was very young. The restaurant was open 24 hours a day, and he was there almost all of the time. It was on a night when your mother was so tired that she just lost track of where she was and what she was doing. She was standing in the kitchen, just crying. He closed the restaurant and just held her until she stopped crying. And right then, he was the only adult human being in the world who would have noticed whether your mother lived or died. She told you it was only once. It was during one of your father's disappearing acts. She was in desperate need, and she was desperately tired. And he was genuinely caring and kind. The next day, your father returned, and she never cheated again. Vows, obligations. 9 months later, you were born. All your mother would ever tell you about him was that he died in a car accident a few weeks later. It's been a long time. But whenever you think about that secret between you and your mother, you can't help wonder. And something always seems to get in your eyes. Must be those onions.
You know, that's really beautiful. And I think
it was inspired by a story that my lady told me a long time ago. And, you know, when, especially women seem to understand that better than guys do. And I think maybe it has to do with the fact that women are just better attuned to situations like that. I don't know, it's just my theory.
I think that it is a beautiful way of expressing a love and incidents that happen that are beyond our control. And we certainly are all in the middle of incidents that are beyond our control today. Who would have ever thought it? And here way back when you were with Quiet Decisions, which was your company, and it was about hypnosis, I was beginning for the first time to learn how powerful thoughts were and words were, because at the same time that I met you, Dick, I met Louise Hay. Now, you may not know who she is, but she's
I know who she is.
Wonderful woman. And we were friends in New York. She modeled in New York, and I modeled in New York. And here she brought about this wonderful You Can Heal Your Life, and you're doing healings in your way, even after you've left your radio station and your business. But talk a little bit about that.
Well, I spent a great deal of my life, instead of working, I just talked on the air, you know, and it was a wonderful thing. I came to a crushing conclusion, partially, I think, mostly because radio, at least at that time, and still most of the time, was run by guys. And guys, as I was saying before, have a difficult time equating with any kind of emotion except negatives. guys can buy, anger or cynicism or political negativity. That's big.
Or even violence.
Yeah, but guys can associate that with that. But we are taught that big boys don't cry. Mm-hmm. Now, my dad was the wisest guy who ever lived, and he said that's true. Big boys don't cry, but he said big men sometimes do. And he was he was right.
Those words, there's the words again, they're so important. And of course the Weeds brought us affirmations, and we used to have to climb the stairs and write down our thoughts, and they were all negative, and we had to turn them around when we went back down the stairs. We had to say something positive. And sometimes that can be difficult to find the words, especially when everybody's worried about their job, they're worried about the economy, and they're worried about getting sick all at the same time.
Yeah.
So
well, a lot of it has to do with the sound of the words, too, I think. You just had a newscast on a little while ago, and I worked at NBC Radio in New York, and the guy who did news on my show was Lester Holt. He broke in on radio news, and I was on late at night, and he was doing the news during my show. And I had a guest on my show one time, and she had written a book on feminism. This was a long time ago when feminism was pretty screechy stuff. And I had her on as a guest, and she was, we were listening while Lester was on the air. And as you probably know, Lester has a very authoritative voice.
Yes.
And he was really coming on. This is NBC News. and this lady fell on the floor laughing. And I said, "What's funny?" And she said, "I can't imagine what he must sound like in bed with a lady. I love you."
That's pretty funny.
Well, yeah, the sound of the voice means so much.
It does. And you have perfected yours. You really, really have. To the point of where it's very comforting.
That's interesting. You don't use that word. I use the word comfort. Mm-hmm. You use tenderness.
I do.
And to some extent, it means basically the same thing, I guess, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, one means touch to me, and the other means hugs. Tenderness to me is touching, and comfort is comforting like a mother holding a child.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
I think that there is a certain element of touch just in the sound of a voice. The sound of a voice goes way, way back. Goes back to cave days. This cave guy was asleep, and he was startled awake by the sound that he thought might be a saber-toothed tiger kind of prowling around. So he gets cold with fear, Then his cave buddy makes a sound. This is before language. This is all the way back then. And our cave guy realizes there's somebody there who has his back. His buddy's voice has a huge impact on him. And it's like, I'm not alone.
It's either a purr or a growl.
Right. All it says is, that the guy, you're not alone. And lots of people are living alone now. I don't know if you know, but half the households in Manhattan are single-person households. Half the households in Manhattan are single-person households. And
of course, there's a lot of people that were away. My son lives in China, and he couldn't get back to Beijing. Luckily, they went out for New Year's to the beach at the South China Sea, and he's still at the South China Sea. So I can appreciate the singleness of New York. I love the way that they're leaning out the windows every night at 7 o'clock and thanking everybody. It's just incredible.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Well, on the I did an album of some of my stuff. Herbie Alpert had an album out, and this was on one of his labels. And on the LP, they said, put a statement. And I was thinking, what the heck would express what I'm doing? And the statement that I put there was, touches are better than words, but words are better than nothing.
Oh, that's
So,
neat.
Well, I really believe that too. You're
Well,
not
you know,
alone when you're.
love gives you the power to merge. It's merging with another person. Love gives you the power to trust. And love gives you the power to be more powerful and to feel better. It gives you
Well,
the
good.
vastness of it's so vast, don't you think? So many ways that you love people.
I think about that a lot of times. You know, there's so many elements of that. Remember the Beatles? She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking, suppose they did that differently. Suppose instead of just yeah, 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 the first statement had been about a girl that was a mutual acquaintance of this guy's buddy. And he said, she loves you. And the guy says, yeah, yeah, right. And then the second time, no, she loves you. Yeah. And then the third time, she loves you. And he says, wow. You know, it's the same thing, but said three different ways.
Right, right. We have
And
to take a break for a minute, Dick, and then we're going to be back. And I want to talk about the audience and the virus and how we can do to spread more love. This is Elizabeth Joyce, and now we're going to have our weekly cosmic tip. This is Elizabeth Joyce with Stargazing, week of April 20th through April 26th, 2020. Prepare for the monkey wrench to be thrown into your plans with the Sun square Saturn transits on Monday. Along with the new moon in Taurus, just know that anything can happen. Throw an alignment of Uranus into the match, and you could be ready for something different and feel the need to step out of your boring routine, especially after the 5 weeks of shutdown. On Monday, it's best to accomplish important tasks earlier than later. The Sun challenges Saturn at the end of the day, and that means that your stamina and drive decreases into I just want to go home and turn off my devices and phone kind of a thing. The Taurus new moon is on Earth Day, Wednesday, April 22nd. Wake up before sunrise to watch the Lyrids meteor shower. This moon is aligned with Expect the Unexpected Uranus. Time to let go of all of your inner frustrations and untie the knots. This new moon may be dark, but it is the calmest point in April. Taurus likes stability, but Uranus wants change. Become a pragmatic revolutionary now. Invent new ideas to manifest your needs and desires. A sacred Sabian symbol for the degree of this new moon is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Find personal meaning for yourself over the next month. One suggestion is that while a rainbow does bring rain, it also connects the spiritual with the earthly realms. Open to your higher spiritual self and begin to bring forth your needs and desires in a way that is in alignment and connected to the one source of what the Hermetic philosophy calls the energy of all that is. Venus and Mars are working in harmony now, so improve your communications and share ideas and relationships. Perhaps it's time to spruce up your home or plant your spring garden. The weekend offers opportunities for deep-level conversations. Speak your truth, but do not force your opinion on others. The flip side is to avoid people who think they know better than everyone else and are happy to drop their unsolicited views onto you. There's a subtle shift on Saturday when Pluto begins his retrograde cycle, lasting through October 4th. You may not notice this, but it's helpful to finish up old business in the months ahead and do behind-the-scenes preparation for a big energy that changes this coming December. Don't let Pluto's planet size fool you, because in certain cases, this energy can be life-changing. This karmic downtime gives you a 5-month breathing space to review and go deeper inside, to look at all of the changes you've been through since the fall of 2019. Watch for the impulse to bury and not look at some things that are really true about your life. Pluto carries subtle energies which can be impersonal and are unable to control. This energy affects the larger areas, such as climate change, politics, as well as the economy. On Sunday, there's a Sun-Uranus conjunction that brings freedom-seeking and unexpected changes. This could involve the coronavirus in some way.
Watch the urge to push beyond the boundaries of your personal comfort zone. This is Elizabeth Joyce with Visions of Reality. The website is new-visions.com. If you'd like to make a call to ask a question or book a reading, the 24-hour answering service is 201-934-8986. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.
This is Elizabeth Joyce with Let's Find Out. Today my guest is Dick Summer. And Dick, I wanted to ask you, how can this knowledge of touching and comfort and tenderness really help the other people around you?
Well, there's a journal called Biology, and it's a technical journal, and they had an article a few months ago that said both performing and listening to music has a significant impact boosting the immune system in its battle with, among other things, deadly viruses. And so that's a sound, and so is the sound of a human voice. And I think they work in the same basic area. Now, I have a discursive mind, and I guess you know that. You were talking about a meteor shower a little while ago, and I just found out that there is a possibility in 2160, I think it is, that a meteor called something or other Tuttle may possibly hit the Earth. And, you know, this crazy mind of mine, I kept thinking, gee, I hope the government issues an order making it sure that all comets from now on have airbags. But they probably won't. But I'm sorry, Elizabeth. You know how I am.
But
you invited me on. You invited me on this show, and you know how my head works.
I love the way when your head works. But you know what's funny? They've been talking about comets hitting the Earth for so long. We were supposed to have one hit last week. And I just feel like they're a normal part of space. Why should we make a big deal out of it? They're a normal part of space. I don't think they're going to hit the Earth. I really trust the universe. I trust our solar system. It works in order. It never seems to go wrong. We do circle the sun every day, right, Dick?
You know, it's one of the things that's interesting to me is you and I are interested in basically the same kind of stuff, but you approach it from a very spiritual perspective, and I don't.
I know.
But interestingly,
you do it very
there's a question about, are you a body with a spirit, or are you a spirit with a body? Mm-hmm. And the thing that's interesting to me is, having said what I just said, is that I have come to a good area of peace with death. Mm-hmm. And the way I do it, I call it my thumbnail theory. While my thumbnail is attached to me, it's a part of me. It's important to me. But once I clip it off, it just falls in the wastebasket, and it's of no importance. And I feel that that's probably what happens.
The way it is.
Yeah, what happens.
And you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of take 3 deep breaths, rub your thumb across the tips of your fingers, and say your name with respect.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the triggers that I used with the hypnosis, and I'm glad you remember that. And I hope you do it.
I've used it my whole life. I have used it. But you know what I love about it, Dick, is that we could be using that now when we start getting stressed out and we want to go outside. And why are we feeling so forbidden when we spent most of our times inside anyway?
I think there are a couple of answers to that, you know, and I have a discussion with my wife going on about this. And there's a good reason for the difference. But my wife, when she was a little kid, one of my wife's wise guy brothers took her out in a rowboat out into the ocean and decided to teach her to swim by throwing her overboard. Now, that is not a good way to teach somebody to swim.
No, she
almost drowned, and ever since that time, she was just a little kid then, ever since that time, she's had a terrible fear of not being able to breathe. And this virus, that's how this virus kills.
Oh, my goodness. Right.
And so she has a terrible fear of it. I have a respect for it, but I feel basically the same way that you do. I can deal with it.
We're a spirit in the body.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So it's different people approach it in different ways. And one of the things that you and I both know is that you can never be judgmental about somebody's perspective on things.
That's true.
When I
call that letting them be where they are. You have to
exactly
let
right.
them be where they are.
Exactly right. What's your son doing in China?
He's been there since 2007. He teaches school to the kindergartners, the young kids, but he's also met a lady and he got married. I never thought he'd get married. And they have a son that she had from her first marriage, so he's got a family for the first time, and I think that's really terrific. He's doing okay.
Now, you involve some Chinese stuff. I know some of the stuff that you use is understandable to Western people and things, but from what I understand, you also use some Chinese understandings. What's that all about?
The healing energy, the chi energy, and the simplicity of understanding that everything in nature was put on the earth for a reason. Every bad thing, even a snake venom, has a healing aspect to it. And if we could understand why the bees love the pollen and they go around and they seed the plants and the flowers, and yet we're afraid of bees, and why we have all of these things that we don't understand. But everything is here for a reason, and it's here for an upliftment. And it contains information. Every single feeling, every single word we say contains information. And when you start to look at the world that way, you can certainly begin to feel more comfort and not such afraid.
I spent a few years doing martial arts, and it was taught by a Japanese gentleman by the name of Kiyoshi Nakae. And I remember this so distinctly. This is while I was still back in college. And there is a key also in martial arts.
Yes.
And Kiyoshi Nakae was, I don't think he was 5 feet tall, probably weighed a little less than 100 pounds. But he was here. He was a member of the Japanese Imperial Wrestling team. That'll give you an idea of his level of accomplishments. And I had a very good buddy who was on the football team at school, and he was always making fun of doing judo. So I said, why don't you come on with me, to meet Kiyoshi? So I said, okay. So we came over one time, and my buddy was, I don't know, he was probably 300 pounds, and he was very wide of the shoulder. And Kiyoshi invited him on the training mat. And my buddy took up a fist fighting stance, and it was blindingly fast. My buddy was on the mat, and Kiyoshi was standing over him and smiling and bowing. So when you say the key, I have some idea of what you're talking about.
And that's good. We have to take a break. It's time for our station break, and we're going to be back with Dick Summer right after these messages. I want to hear the end of that story.
Okay.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Now more than ever, you need Elizabeth Joyce's Sanitizing Healing Spray. It clears and cleans viruses and germs, and it helps to prevent spreading those viruses and germs. Elizabeth's Sanitizing Healing Spray contains frankincense and sandalwood. You spray it as generously and as often as you need. You can order it online or call 201-934-8986. 201-934-8986.
The student asks the teacher, "How do I experience transformation?" The teacher replies, "When the student is ready to receive deeper answers, the student then asks, 'How do I know what deeper questions to ask?' And the teacher replies, "When the student decides to commit to a practice inviting transformation, level 2 questions will be revealed." Hi, I'm Tomas Garza, and as a teacher and host, I'm inviting listeners to enroll in the mastery of transformation by joining me on Decide to Transform, your bridge to level 2 answers, Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Elizabeth Joyce's Elixir Tea is really a healing tea. It's blended according to Ayurvedic principles and the chanting of Sanskrit mantras. So it assures a deep cellular healing, relief that flows from within. So drink Elizabeth's healing tea before you meditate. Order it online or call 201-934-8986, 201-934-8986.
It had been a very long time since you'd felt like a beautiful, desirable, sensual, special woman. You were out of town on business, and you set it up on purpose. You know exactly how to slip under the covers of a man's mind. It's automatic with you. It's really something you do in your own head more than anything else. It's just a small voice that happens inside you. It purrs. It says, "Yes, you, now." The only conscious thing you do is you raise one eyebrow just a little bit and you smile, just enough for him to see the tip of your tongue brush against the back of your teeth. Then you stand a little too close to him, looking up carefully into his eyes. The warmth of your body's lifting a touch of your perfume into the space between you. It's really not something you do on purpose. It's the femaleness of you, loving the closeness of his physical strength. You can sense that you were making him generate even more masculine power just by being so close. You were interested in healing yourself. He was interested in you. And you really didn't expect that. It was amazing. That night 3 years ago. He couldn't get enough of your ideas. He couldn't get enough of your dreams. And by midnight, you were slowly stepping out of your high heels, calves flexing, the light from a candle flashing in your eyes for just a moment as you lay down slowly next to him. And he couldn't get enough of you. You woke alone in the morning, the smell of him still in your hair, the memory of the taste of his skin, and the touch of his fingers, the only proof that he was ever really there. But it worked. You got strong again, quickly. You met a very good man, you fell in love, and you're going to be married soon. But every year, that small, purring voice inside you wishes a perfect stranger, a man you'll never see again, a happy anniversary. And you wonder if he ever remembers you.
Elizabeth Joyce with Let's Find Out, and that was Dick Summer with his Perfect Stranger story. And I think that both of the stories that we have on the air today are very deep and profound. I really think that love gives you the experience of being in touch with your own infinity, with your own divineness. You almost feel like there's something moving inside of you that's spiritual. Don't you think so, Dick?
I gotta tell you that the story that played was inspired by a middle of the night phone call. I always loved being on the air very late at night. There are positives and negatives about everything, yin and yang. There aren't that many people who listen in the middle of the night, but the people who are listening are really listening. They're paying attention to you, as opposed to radio as kind of a background that happens most of the day.
Oh, that's true.
So I like that. And I used to do stories like that when I was on the air at NBC in New York. It was at a Studio 2B, which was not the studio that I think you were in. I think you were on the 9th floor. But Studio 2B, it was just me, our engineer, a couple of fairly dim lights, and it was a blacked out 60-plus story skyscraper called 30 Rock.
Oh, yeah.
and there I was. It was just me and people who would call on the telephone. And that story basically was started by a lady who called one night, and I remember all these years later. She started out talking ordinarily, and she got about halfway through, and she broke down, and she couldn't keep going. And I think that is a perfect example of touching with the sound.
And I think that would be tenderness as well.
Yes, it would. Sure. But
So
you can be comfortable without necessarily being tender. There is a distinction.
Yes,
I'm an
that's true.
IFR-rated pilot, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that means I'm allowed to fly in clouds. And one of the things about that is that when you're standing on the ground, you can tell what's up and down because of gravity. You can feel the tug. Flying IFR in instrument conditions, there are no visual references and there's no horizon. And ordinarily, you could also tell where down is by the tug of gravity. But when you bank a plane to turn, it creates a circle. And that circle creates a tug called centrifugal force. You know about that.
Right.
It feels like gravity. You almost have to feel it to believe it. It feels like
you're being
outside of
pulled to one side or the other.
Yeah. It feels like the outside of the turn is down, but it's not. It's sideways. And that's why every IFR-qualified airplane has an instrument called an artificial horizon. It's how you keep control of an airplane when you can't tell up from down. Because in a bank, you can't tell up from down or sideways by the way things feel. So you can feel comfortable in a situation like that when you've done it often enough. But it's not necessarily tender. It's a very big difference, and it's a feeling of being in control. One time, I was coming back from a trip from Massachusetts down to Pennsylvania, and this was before we had IFR stuff in the airplane. And there was a front that was supposed to go through, I think it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and this was 10 o'clock in the morning, so it was fine. And I'm bopping down, and just south of New York City, I ran into a thunderstorm.
Oh, boy.
Now you've flown in airliners often enough to know that you don't even fly an airliner into a thunderstorm.
No, and I worked in aviation for corporate jets, so I know about a small aircraft and all that energy.
Yeah, well, I had a little Piper 4-seat airplane, So, you're not supposed to fly into a thunderstorm. But, and the technique when you do fly into a thunderstorm, if you do by mistake, you don't turn around. You're supposed to fly straight through, because a thunderstorm can turn around behind you, and that could create other problems. But the reason I started telling you this is because I declared an emergency, and I said, vector me to another airport. So they vectored me to North Philadelphia. And then the controller said, oh, by the way, there's a thunderstorm over North Philadelphia, too. So I said, can you vector me somewhere where there's no thunderstorm? So he did, and I was on an ILS approach. You're probably familiar with that. It's a very accurate IFR approach, and everything was fine, I had total control of everything until I got back on the ground. When I got back on the ground, my knees got shaky.
Yeah, because of the tension, sure.
Yeah, because, the training and the experience got me through that particular instance.
It was a challenge.
It wasn't tender by any means. In fact, it was the opposite. It was concentration that got me through that. So there's just a slight difference, I think, between the way you look at it and the way I look at it.
Well, it's the same thing as somebody saying, oh, I really like your dress, and, oh, I like that dress. The difference is the voice tone, and
sure.
That difference was the energy tone.
Yeah, again, it's the sound of the voice.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's very important.
So talk about your website and how people could get some of your recordings if they would like to.
Well, it's very kind of you. The website is www.dicksummer.com, and there's a regular podcast, happens every week, and that's at dicksummer.com/podcast. So that's pretty simple, I guess. There are 7 LP. Back in the old days, there'd be LPs.
Yeah, and MP3.
Yeah, well, they are, but there are CDs also, and they're on the website if people are interested in them. There's bedtime stories. There's several night connections things like the story that you just did on the air. There's a thing called Quiet Hands, and Quiet Hands is it's about the way words can touch people, literally.
That's one of my favorites.
You like that one?
Hands.
Yeah. Okay.
I do like
there was a back rub on that, and a lot of people, I think, found themselves kind of rubbing their backs on the radio speaker. But and there was a very short novel called "Love Comes When You Least Expect It," and that was very difficult to write because it was not autobiographical, really, but there were elements of it in there. Mm-hmm. And you've written a lot of books. You have, 9, 10 books you've got?
I just released my 10th book called Backstage, which has to do with what you're talking about a little bit because it's the energy behind the action. For example,
what is the energy?
The lady met the perfect stranger, but why did she meet the perfect stranger and why did that happen? My theory is that that's something that she brought to herself for her own comfort with her mind way before the energy of them meeting happened. I think that what we think and what we say brings us our future, and I think with our thoughts that we're creating our future. I've seen it time and time and time again. I just had my girlfriend call me up from Pennsylvania and tell me that she had been worried about being cut back to a 32-hour week, and today she got an email from her boss saying she was cut back to a 32-hour week. So she'd been worried about it for 2 weeks, so she brought it to herself. And that's why we really do have to be careful of our words and our thoughts and what we say and our quick, rough responses like you talked about with the radio men and how people think. The more that you can think of comfort and tenderness, the more that you will receive comfort and tenderness.
That's a very good idea. How about the guy involved in the story?
Well, he probably had the same feelings. Who knows? I'm sure that they comforted each other. I don't think anything happens by accident. And I truly believe that when you make a wish and you want it to come true and it seems to take time, it's because all of the energies have to be in place before the event can happen. And that's the secret of backstage.
Okay.
It was like my grandmother's house. When I was 5 years old, Dick, she told me I would be living there in my last years. Never, ever did I ever think that was going to happen.
Well, you went through some very tough times when you were a little kid. Do you think that had anything to do with your abilities in what you're doing now?
No, I think that my abilities was gifted to me at birth. My grandmother had these abilities too. She was incredible. She was a shaman and a wonderful gardener, which is why I'm playing the meditation tonight of the Garden of Life, because I think love is the seed to the Garden of Life. I think that love is very vast. And I think it brings us nutrition in many, many ways, which is why I love having you on the air, because you certainly are reaching the hearts of the people that know about mothers and daughters and know about the perfect stranger. And that might be the only way that they can feel love, and that's okay.
It's one of the things got me into trouble in the radio a lot. As I said, radio was run and still is run mostly by guys, and they get very upset. And when they hear stories like that on their radio station. And as I said, that got me into trouble more often than not. Well, but that's okay, because, one of the other things that my dad always said is be yourself, because everybody else is taken.
That's really precious.
He was very, very smart, and he put things in very simple statements like that.
Well, it's funny. People are talking about being their real self and not having to pretend or act and go along with the Joneses, and that's who you truly are. And I think it's wonderful when people can be themselves. I think they need to stand in their truth, whatever that is.
Yeah, and the idea that a man can't cry, as I told you, my dad put that into perfect perspective. Big boys don't cry, but sometimes big men do. And I saw him cry several times. But because he understood that and he really felt that way, I don't think he was ever embarrassed by anything.
No, that's good.
I think about him a lot, and I don't know if you think about your parents this way, but he was always dad in my life, and he was my only hero. And I think about that a lot, because we don't know our heroes. We know what they did, but not why they did them. George Washington. George Washington, big hero, okay? Crossed the Delaware with those guys. I don't know if you get into that ever, but that was a terrible night. There was an awful snowstorm. It was actually a blizzard.
Down on the Delaware.
Some of his guys didn't even have shoes, okay? And they had to march from where they crossed, I think it was like 20, 25 miles, a walk to get to where they were going to do battle. And the first order that George Washington gave when he crossed the Delaware was burn the boats. Now, in the history books, it says he did that so they couldn't retreat. But I wonder if the real reason why he did that, burn the boats, was to give these poor, shivering, god-awful situation guys a couple of minutes of warmth.
That might be true. Well, we are at the end of the show because we're going into the meditation, and thank you for giving us your couple of minutes of warmth. It's been wonderful having you on, and I hope you come back. You're welcome, Dick. Thank you. This is Elizabeth Joyce with Let's Find Out. Now it's time to get ready for your meditation. And next week we're going to have Frank St. James on, who will be answering your questions. And you can call in and we will have a talk with you. So thank you for listening to Let's Find Out, and I'll see you next time.
This is the Garden of Life meditation with Elizabeth Joyce. The thoughts we think and the words we speak are constantly shaping our world and our experiences. Many of us are still in the old habit of negative thinking, and we do not realize the damage that we have inflicted upon ourselves. However, we are never stuck because we can always change our thinking. As we continue to choose positive thoughts and actions, the negative thoughts dissolve away. So, take a deep breath, sit with your spine straight, both feet flat on the floor, and legs uncrossed. Or you can lay down. Close your eyes and allow these messages to flow and penetrate within you. Your subconscious mind will pick up the ones that are the most important to you at this moment. These positive concepts are like fertilizing the soil of your mind. As your body, mind, spirit absorbs them by repetition, you are slowly strengthening and crossing the bridge, the very basis of your garden of life. As we go through these affirmations, as you allow them to flow into your consciousness, know that you are planting the seeds of positive thinking into your garden of life. I release the past with ease, and I trust the process of life. I close the door on old hurts, and I forgive everyone, myself included. I visualize a stream in front of me. I take all those experiences, those old hurts, old pain, and I put them into this stream and watch them dissolve and drift downstream until they totally dissipate and disappear. I am free, and everyone in my past is free. I am ready to move forward into the new adventures that await me. Lifetimes come and go, but I am always eternal. I am alive and vital, no matter which kind of vibrational plane I am existing on. Love surrounds me. Love surrounds me now, and love surrounds me in the future. Love surrounds me forever. My willingness to forgive begins my healing process. I allow the love from my own heart to wash through me, cleansing and healing every part of my body. I know I am healing. Forgiveness of myself and others releases me from the past. Forgiveness is the answer for almost every problem. Forgiveness is a gift to myself, because when I can forgive, I am setting myself free. I free myself and everyone in my life from the old past hurts. They are free now, and I am free now to move forward into new, glorious, fabulous experiences. I cross this bridge with joy and ease, and the old issues have transformed into wonderful new experiences. You know, my life gets better all the time. I am willing to release old negative beliefs. They are only thoughts, and the old thoughts stand in my way. My new thoughts are positive and fulfilling. I release the things in my past that cloud my vision. I now can see the perfection of all of life. I willingly forgive, and I bring love into my vision. I see with compassion and understanding. My clear insight is reflected in my outer sight. I breathe in the fullness and richness of life. Take a deep breath and see yourself breathe in the fullness and richness of life. Take a deep breath and bring in the aromatherapy of spring, all the flowers blooming and the glorious sights of the brilliant colors. As I take a deep breath, I observe my life with joy abundantly supporting me. Life supports me with more good than I can imagine. I am guided through the day in making good choices. Divine intelligence and my blessed higher self continually guide me in the realization of my goals, and I am safe. I am safe. It's only change. I am safe. It's only change. I am safe. It's only change. As I break free and think wonderful thoughts, I move past my limitations into freedom. I now become all I am created to be. I am that. I am love. I am growing in full bloom in my garden of wisdom. This is my new vision of reality. And so it is.